Welcome back, everyone. It's really, really great to see y'all. And I think we have a really fun topic to talk about today, and that is rescuing a messy IT organization. So, a lot of the time, when you're an IT manager, you get a new job or you're promoted, and suddenly you have this organization that is really messy, really cluttered, whatever the case may be. And now it is your responsibility to take that organization and make it something that is productive, cohesive, things like that. And yes, Tim, that's exactly it. The dumpster fire just going down the river. That's exactly what it looks like. So um, I'll go ahead and let our panelists, though, introduce themselves and tell us a little bit about what they're doing now and then their journey in IT. So, Damon, if you want to jump in first.
Hi, Damon Tice. I work for a custom millwork company out of Northwest Indiana. Been in IT for 30 years, I suppose. Interestingly enough, I've just moved out of IT in between the time that I got volunteered for this and today, and I'm now the executive director of operations. So I'm giving someone else a mess. Not really. I've hired a young man that's very eager to learn and take over as much responsibility as he can. And I'm using some friends in the MSP field to fill in the gaps while he gets trained. So it's interesting. It's kind of on point. It'll be nice to see what kind of feedback I get from him, whether it's just glazed over. I guess a little more than a decade of infrastructure and development here, and see what he thinks of it.
Yeah, man, yeah, that's quite a project, but congratulations, it's gonna be great. Um, Tim, I know that you just did this recently, but do you want to go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself? You've already done this feel a lot, so no need to.
No, you keep dragging me back for these things, and apparently that's a good thing. No, for those who may not know, I'm Tim Lanning. I'm currently the VP of IT at SGRC Texas, which is a child welfare foster care. We handle that for kind of a broad region around San Antonio, Texas. 210 represent. When we talk about messy organizations, I'll try really hard not to throw my current employer under the bus too hard, but that GIF I sent, that's we were there. They were just given a bad hand, and they made a good decision to bring in internal IT and kind of work with the MSP, and that was me. Hi, I'm the problem. No, learned a lot. So excited to be back.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Ron, would you like to introduce yourself as well?
Yeah. Hi, my name's Ron. I've been in IT for about 20 years. About 7 of that was MSP life. The rest of it was in-house in one place or another. Currently at Wallace Plus and Dreyer. I've been working off and on with the firm for going on 8, almost 9 years now. Accounting firm, number 1 accounting firm in the state of Arizona. Couple years running now. We're located in Chandler. That's where I'm sitting right now, just outside of Phoenix. And then just north is our Scottsdale location. So 2 sites. I've got 1 sysadmin with me by the name Marnell, greatest hire I've ever had. But 2-member team with a MSP backup as we needed. I've in my MSP life, I've probably onboarded around 50 or so different clients, ranging from pretty immaculate, pretty awesome stuff to walk into to need to get the lawyers involved before I'm allowed to touch anything. So pick the gamut. I've kind of been there.
Well, yeah, I actually, that is a great segue to one of the questions I had. That was kind of the first question. What was maybe the worst situation that you've stumbled upon? And this is a question for everybody too, so everybody feel free to jump in, but I thought this would be a fun one to jump into first, and we can all commiserate together.
I'll go ahead and roll with that one since I just finished up. I was tasked with onboarding a client. They were told that the IT director was going to be fired. That's always the best part. Has not been notified as of yet. So I had to come in under cover of darkness, so to speak, and kind of assess and check it out. And So I get a vibe on what's going on and what do we have access to, what do we don't. Well, we have this, this, and this. Okay, when's it going to happen? It's going to happen this time. Okay, great. So the day comes, we lock the individual out. We ultimately gain a little bit of access. Within a very, very short time, probably about 15 minutes, we discovered there was a significant amount of illegal activity, about 8 terabytes of porn amongst 50 or 60 terabytes of other stolen stuff. The IT director there that had been terminated was basically hosting his own Plex server on their cluster and sharing it on out. So we proceeded to stop. We didn't touch anything. Here's what we got. About a month later, they worked it all out, and then we were able to go in there and do our job. So that was the worst one I walked into.
Wow. What a what a situation to kick off on, because that's really bad. That's a really bad one.
That's my worst one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, kind of to Ron's comment about somebody on their way out, I took over a property management company where the CIO was leaving under less than ideal terms, and I had access to this guy for about 2 days for him to explain the topology, the custom databases, the integration, and then he vanished like the wind. And it took, the hardware wise, it wasn't terrible. And 20 or 30 remote offices, VPNs, it was all sonic walls at that time. But the software, the custom programming that he walked away from because he had been there a long time, with no documentation, not even comments in the code. I'd say it probably took a year to really get a grip on how the data moved from point to point, server to server, system to system. And then, I wound up doing on-call work for them for a decade. So until they shut those systems down. Nobody else wanted to touch it.
Oh gosh. Yeah, that sounds bad too.
Well, I don't really have anything like that. I have somewhat of a different perspective, and I'll talk strictly about where I currently am at, just because. And I kind of want to preface everything I'm going to say. The organization really made a good call ultimately, and wanted to change how they were doing IT, and they weren't satisfied with the status quo. And so, number one, right off the bat, that's a win right there. Regardless of your current environment, if the organization, if higher ups are looking at the situation and saying, "Hey, we need to change this in some form," and you're part of that, ride that. That's fun. It's not fun, but it's fun. So here, I would say this was kind of one of the worst situations I walked into. We basically were paying an MSP over $5,000 a month to do absolutely nothing. I would try to get them to do things. They wouldn't do it. It was the worst. Lighting money on fire. And so I work directly for the CFO now, and she was not very happy with the whole situation, obviously. And so trying to make things work, we had a CTO at the time that also kind of was not doing very much. And so circumstances change. I Mr. Magoo'd my way into a VP of IT position, was an IT manager 5 seconds before. A lot of trust placed in me, and then it was like, okay, now all the blinders are off of the poor IT manager. He understands the dumpster fire that it truly is. And that was intense. I've been here, started as IT manager 2.5 years now. Mm-hmm. We're finally getting to that point where it's like, okay, we feel like we can actually be proactive now. Yeah. So messy organization, definitely not anything illegal, definitely not anything like Damon mentioned, but you get your unique situations and you just got to make it work.
Yeah. So whenever you first inherit one of those messy IT organizations, how do you assess what exactly is broken? Because you might not know just by looking at it what exactly the problem is. So how do you go about diagnosing that?
Look for input from the users. I mean, not necessarily solicit it, but listen to what's going on. And because they may not know something's broken as bad as it is,
Mhm.
but if you have, an IT background, you may see what they're doing systematically throughout their workflow that is just absurd.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, agreed. Go ahead, Ron.
For me, it's I'm with Damon on this one. You talk to the stakeholders. My first question every time: why am I here? Why am I physically here? Why is was there nobody here? Was the person that was here inadequate? Was why me? Why the company I'm representing? Why am I here with that? What's not working? What do you not like? That type of thing. A lot of the technical questions, those folks aren't going to be able to answer. That's why they hired you. You got to have to figure that out on your own, and just a lot of digging and so forth. But figuring out what they are, because you might see technically, oh, all these things need to be replaced, and they're like, everything still sucks because you didn't do blah blah blah, and you're like, oh my God, you just wanted cache mode on your Outlook? Like, you know what I mean? Like, you need to talk to the people who hired you first as to what their goals are, what their vision are. And then you can kind of go from there. And usually you can find that. I agree with Damon 100%. Like, people's workflows, people will make stuff work. Doesn't mean it's the best way to do it, but they will figure out how to make it work. I think it's your job to figure out how can you simplify and narrow it down and then make their life better. And then you're in. You're oh my God, you're the IT wizard.
Ditto. But I think the thing that really worked for me, and it was kind of weird because like I was in IT for like a year, and then it was okay, you're VP now. Like, oh, I was not in IT for a year. I was IT manager here, and then VP after that. So there was this weird little like flux period where like I was familiar with what the org was doing, but I couldn't do anything about it, right? Or like I would say, hey, we need to do this because I'm hearing this, and I would get shot down, or we couldn't do that because budget, whatever. Then it kind of changed when I was put in that ultimate leadership position, right? And so I will say that's exactly what I did. I actually, and I still have recurring meetings with these folks, but I took the main departments, the main movers and shakers, HR, finance, some of our program folks, because we're a nonprofit with child welfare, so all of our caseworkers and everything, just the higher ups. Sometimes I'll go listen at that base user level still, but I do kind of look at the trends and stuff from the support ticket queue, and that's my job to look at that. But I really do still have those meetings where I say, hey, what's working, what isn't? I need to know. I need my finger on the pulse. And I would say when you're coming into a messy organization, that's like you have a good reason to set up that cadence, to even if it's just a one-off, to have that, hey, I'm new here. I want to figure out what you're doing. As an IT manager, if I had done that first couple months and not waited until I was VP to do that, I might have been able to change some things a little faster. So I would definitely say that is the way. Bank it. Do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that one of the questions that I had that's a great follow-up to that is when you do inherit that organization, there are decisions that have been made in the past. How do you approach learning about those decisions without getting stuck in that blame that can often happen? That can kind of be distracting.
Let's look honestly. This is I've had these conversations. Let's look honestly about what we're at. Like this was the decision that was made. We're not going to assign, like you say, we're not going to assign blame, but we have to deal with the ramifications of that. I had to deal with the fact that I was lighting $5,500 a month on fire to do nothing. Okay, can I make them do things worthy of that money? Turns out no. Okay, well, we're stuck in a contract with them. We have to deal with the reality on the ground. We have to deal with the ramifications of the decisions that were made before you got here. But I think it's very important that you just say, look, I just got here. I need to work with what you want, not what has been. We can make what has been whatever it needs to be over given enough time. But what do you want? You kind of pivot there, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I don't feel the blame game works in any way, shape, or form. You're there for a reason. If everything was great and hunky dory, you wouldn't have been hired. That's the way I look at it. You're there to fix things. You're not, and so you need to set expectations. That's why it's important to talk to people to say, hey, look, I've got a lot on my plate here. You brought up a thing, Damon. You mentioned there's a program this guy wrote. I have no idea, But
Mhm.
I bet Damon's response was not, well, sorry, we can't do it. It's like, you need to give me time to figure it out.
My response was, what's the budget?
Yeah, there you
Because
go.
it needs to be big.
Yep.
I mean, there are certain things that you have to communicate to the stakeholders that it's going to take time, and thus it's going to take money, because the worst stuff is the tedious stuff that they're not necessarily going to see physical results. Documentation of the topology of the network. I mean, simple things. If you walk into a place, whether you're walking in as an MSP representative or you're taking over from an MSP, it goes both ways.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lack of documentation, which is rampant. I preach that to my guys all the time. I said, if you don't know how to do something and I'm walking you through it, you better be making an SOP on it and putting it in the IT repository on the server or in your book stack library or whatever the case is for the place that you're at, so that the guy after you doesn't have the same problems. At least have that professional courtesy.
Right.
And it doesn't matter how many places I've walked into, there's never anything. Maybe they have a black book of passwords, but if you ask them for documentation on the VLANs, they look at you like you've got a horn on your head. There's just, it's figure it out.
Yeah.
But again, executives and stakeholders and ownership is not going to see their return on investment in any practical level on somebody sitting down and figuring it out and creating documentation for them. It's a tough sell, and they have to be made aware of that up front. It's going to take time to understand these things, because this is the boat we were left in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say to the documentation part, I always try to put yourself, I mean, it's easier if you've been there, but you're the guy that got the call at 1 a.m, everything's down, needs to be running right now. Why is it not working? You need to have set documentation. You need to have something that you can go to. So anytime you make any changes, if you think about it, and I'm sure we'll get into like, how do you start changing messy environments? Because that's dangerous too. But when you start document those changes as much as you possibly can, because you want to make sure that if you do get that phone call, you are the unfortunate soul that's got to get that done. You want to have everything at your disposal, or at least the gotchas, the things that this is out of the norm. Here it is, documented for it. Make sure it's accessible, that type of thing. But blame game doesn't work. It's not. We're not here to point fingers. It is what it is.
Yeah. I was curious about, you mentioned documentation. That's, one of the many things that could be an issue in a messy environment. So how do you keep track of all of the things that do need to be fixed?
Wow. Start at the top. Well, like Ron said, why are you there? I've been in places where they had an IT department, and that's a really valid question. Why are you bringing me in? Because their guys either didn't have the time to do it, or the know-how, or flat out refused to address it over fear of breaking something that was already held together with string.
Mm-hmm.
So you can be put in a very precarious situation figuring out what to fix first.
Yeah. That was another thing, is how do you even prioritize everything that needs to be fixed? I mean, you can keep track of it, but if there are so many things that seem to be broken, what is that first priority?
For me, it's security. Mm-hmm. Like, if I can contain my messiness, then I can work with it. So creating those boundaries around making sure that, you can be doing all the best stuff, and then two very important people don't have MFA on their accounts. They get hacked. People come in, wiped it out. Get that fence built, protect whatever you inherited that mess, protect it. It's always security focused, in my opinion, as the first part of it. But then, you should not be the only person making decisions on what is the priority. You should be working with the people who hired you, the power players, and you are there to make recommendations on, this is what I think should be the first priority, and so forth. This is where I think our money spent right out the gate, and this is what will have the best impact, ROI, all that jazz, right? But they need to help prioritize that as well. That should not solely be put on you. Because obviously, I think a lot of times folks will gravitate to what they're used to or what they're good with. If you're really good at networking, you're like, I'm going to clean up all these switches. VLANs are going to be great. Everything's going to be fantastic, but no one's got MFA on all their email accounts and you're getting hacked. That was not a good use of your time. You do that later. That type of thing.
I think working through, and this is where I'll drop the worksheet, probably spoiling a question for later. But the way we did this, I was super blessed to bring on an infrastructure engineer who literally is the reason I'm sane in this role. And I basically asked him, because I am not interested in just assuming that everything's fine because I'm in charge. That's not how that works. So when he was hired, I was in this VP role for a while. And so I had him, hey, go through this worksheet, assess where we're at, give me honest feedback. And boy, was it honest, and boy, was it unflinching. And it taught me a lot. So I'm thankful to him for that. But that worksheet, look through it. I'm not going to walk through it or anything. I left little breadcrumbs in there. And please, it's on the lab. Ask me if you have any questions. I'm happy to do whatever. But this was key. We did this in about August of last year, and it informed our budget for this year and the priorities and everything. And speaking to Ron's point and Damon's point, I mean, we were able to figure out where the biggest fires were and put them out. And that tells you something, that there were fires even while I was here in VP. So maybe I'm still learning the lessons. But I agree. You have to figure out prioritization first. And absolutely, that should be something that's aligned with the strategy of the organization. Because if they're interested in having a entirely remote workforce, then there's things you don't need to worry about, like on-prem Active Directory as much. You need to figure out how to make that work with the strategic objective, right? Like, you have to figure that out. So without waving my hands too much, just that worksheet was sanity. And honestly, I had it pulled up every day for a hot minute while we were in budget talks, because the CFO would call me and say, why are you asking for X? I'd go look at the assessment and be like, here's why, So I don't know, but the point is, even if you don't use my worksheet, you figure out your own process, document what's there, take a snapshot in time. You will see trends. Mm-hmm. You will see things that you need to fix.
I like Nate's comment in the chat about prioritizing high value business objectives. I mean, that's a super succinct way to put it, to identify those things and look at how the technology affects them or where it's lacking.
Yeah.
Yeah. When are you going to get Nate on one of these? He's like the most eloquent speaker.
Actually, he'll be there in a couple weeks. So
yay. Fantastic.
yeah, he'll be on. I believe it's about balancing leadership and individual contributor responsibilities. So he'll be jumping in on that one. And yeah, he always has some really great insight and very succinct insight too.
Yeah, I ramble.
It's great. I can put that on a graphic or something and just be like, look what this smart person said. Yeah, that's great. So I also wanted to know, in either a past or a present role, what is one change that you might have implemented that had a surprisingly big impact on organizing a messy organization?
One specific change. I was at a leasing company many years ago that I don't know, there was 100 users that were trying to send out faxes throughout the day, and it never occurred to anyone to hook the fax machines up and do it through the network, so that you could basically, in a nutshell, we took and wrote a hook for the print server that if anybody printed, and bear with me, it's Novell days, if anybody printed to LPT4, it wasn't a printer, it was a fax machine. And it was like earth shaking to that company, because if you can picture 100 people walking around cubicles, and at any time a dozen of them might be trying to send a fax, it was ridiculous. So it was both practical and technologically savvy at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think I would have to go hardware, just streamlining. everybody has the same system, and if you don't, you better have a really good reason why you don't. And everybody should have the exact same stuff, easy things to replace. Pick a manufacturer. I don't care. I've worked with all of them, but find one that works well for your business needs.
Jeff, you have a call on line one.
You can work on that is consistent. Downtime, it can't happen. We charge $300 to $400 an hour. We make sure that none of my coworkers can ever give the excuse to their partner that they weren't working because they didn't have a working computer. Nah, not happening. I got 6 spares sitting behind me. I got 3 sitting off site. If somebody's got an issue and I can't fix it in a very short amount of time, here's your spare. They get back up and working. We work in a Citrix environment, so they're basically little terminals basically. But get them back working. Okay, you working? You're good? Awesome. Now you can sit down, you can breathe, you can figure out what it is, and you can swap them back out usually later that day, or maybe it's something worse. So that one I think was probably a big one because it just keeps people able to keep going and not have any issues. When I've walked in environments where it's like it's all over the place, and this person liked Microsoft Surfaces, and this person loves Lenovo, and that person loves Dell. Drivers are different, everything's different. I don't know why this one's not working. That one, no, streamline that. So I would say for me, that was a huge benefit. Everything's the same.
We big thing we did was SharePoint. Therefore, Microsoft SharePoint's equaling Microsoft 365 groups, equaling Teams groups, equaling all that horrible mess that Microsoft's made it all. If you create an M365 group, it creates a SharePoint for some reason. Biggest change we did was tamp that down immediately. And then we were left with 193 SharePoint sites. Just because someone had created an M365 group. And so beginning to go through the process, documenting, asking, why do you have this Christmas 2023 SharePoint? Do you really need it? No, you don't, turns out. Can we delete it? No? Tough. Type conversations. Seriously, I'm not kidding. That was a conversation. It's 2024. You don't need 2023 Christmas. But just tamping all that down, disabling group creation, made it so they had to come to IT to create groups, and therefore everything was a lot more architected. Now, after we're done handling SharePoint, my engineer's finally done with that project. He's been blood, sweat, and tears into it. We are down to our main document library site and three, I can count 3 others that are there for hyper-specific purposes like Microsoft Project or anything like that. We have 4 SharePoint sites in our entire environment, down from 193. So,
does that guy have any hair left at all?
No, actually, I think I killed off the last little bit.
God bless. It's amazing.
He's worth every penny.
I think
he doesn't have to spend money on haircuts anymore. So
Oh man.
To your point on locking that down and not letting everybody make everything. I think a lot of folks think it's like because us in IT we want to like control everything, and it's like no, we just want things to be consistent. I tell people all the time, I'm like, I've got stuff locked down, but if you bring me a reason why you need that thing and it's not going to harm anything, I'll put it in there. We use a Citrix environment, everything, nobody can install anything and so forth, but that doesn't mean I'm not going to allow something in there. I've had people, hey, it'd be really great if we had this one calculator. Okay, well, what does it do? Well, it does this one special thing that we can do in accounting. It's a separate, and it works really well. Okay, cool, done. Next rollout, we had it in there and everyone was happy with it, and folks that didn't need it didn't use it, and folks that loved it were like, oh my God, this is a godsend, thank you so much. I didn't know that calculator existed. I had no idea. I didn't know why anybody needed it. So encouraging, I think that's our job, I think, is to set those boundaries, but then encourage folks to like come to us with ideas and things of that nature. We're not the bad guys. We're not trying to stop everything. We're trying to make sure everything works. And if it's got a fundamental reason to be there and it can work in the environment, there's no reason why it shouldn't.
Well, and to your point, Ron, I mean, that's ultimately it all goes back to communication, right? Because if you're just sitting there, you're the arbiter of all things, you're sitting in your castle like, no, you got your rubber stamp, and then, you're going to get a perception, right? And that's not a good perception. You're not really aligning yourself with the strategic objectives of the company if you're in your castle.
Yeah.
Communicate. Be open, be there, right? You have to be there. I had to go interject myself. I had, like I said earlier, you had the cadence with all these different departments. I had to go do that. That wasn't something that I walked into. Communicate. You will find. You will start to, and if you open your brain to trends and and all that, you'll start to see it, and you'll start to be able to align yourself better. Not with like, I wish we had the latest emoji. Like, no, who cares, right? But what's important to do strategic objectives. By the way, I do make sure the latest emojis are always in all of our environments.
If they're available on Teams at all times.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Bar none.
Yeah, I mean, that has to be that. I think that is a business critical objective right there. So as you are trying to fix these messy organizations, most of the time you're not alone. You do have a team. Well, hopefully. I can't say most of the time. Hopefully you have a team. And if you have a team, how do you keep morale up when you have all of these great people and suddenly they're having to clear out 193 or whatever SharePoint sites? How do you keep morale up when they're having to do things like that?
You got to keep them focused. I mean,
right.
you have to give them a path, because if you don't, they'll drown. They didn't sign up to be in that position, in all honesty, for the most part. So you've got to give them accurate direction, a critical path to go down, and objectives to meet. And really, it helps if they're in smaller increments, because then they don't feel so overwhelmed with it. Because a lot of that stuff, like Tim's example, my God, I mean, years ago, I went through the Microsoft certification when it was MOS, Microsoft Office SharePoint Server, and it was a free product, and it wasn't cloud-based. You had to run your own server on site, and it was painful. I mean, I looked at that and I said, that's a job all to itself.
Yep.
Just to be the SharePoint admin.
Yep.
And I quickly removed myself from that career path. But you got to give them milestones to get to, and objectives to reach they can feel good about in manageable increments.
Taking something like what Tim's got for the IT assessment template, and not only filling that out, like, okay, here's how nasty everything is, but then going with it, getting down, I like to get my hands dirty, especially when you're a small team. Figure out what everybody's good at and what everybody likes to do, and then take the projects that might be in there and push everybody in those different directions and help them. Let's all play to our strengths here, right? I'm not good at that. None of us are good at everything in IT. There's always something that we might shine at better than another. Tim might be good at everything, but some of us are just focused in areas. But for me, I agree with Damon. Like, you can't eat the elephant all at once. And honestly, having an Excel document like that, or just any document for that matter, and keeping snapshots of it. So every time you guys, once a week, every 2 weeks, once a month, once quarterly, whatever it might be, take a snapshot of it and move it. So when I came back, they had kind of adopted that, and they brought us in, and we had, I think, basically around 36 projects, not 36 little things. We had 36 projects to work on. And it took us about a year or so to get most of those wiped out. But we had set goals for it. Okay, here's priority ones. Here's ones that needs to happen now. This is one. These 5 can't happen until that one's done. That type of thing. And we just kind of kept going at it and going at it and going at it. And next thing you know, you look back at previous. We kept a tab for every meeting. You look back at previous tabs and like, my God, I can't believe that was awful. And now it's like, oh, okay, And then you add new things come up, right? But I think kind of breaking it down, helping people find the path that might be best for them. If you're managing them, definitely moving in that direction. Give them clear examples of goals and objectives. I don't know, just go work on SharePoint. No, you work on SharePoint for eternity. Our goal is to eliminate all unneeded ones. Let's assess every single one of them and find out why they're there and do they need to be there. That's a goal. Get it done. That type of thing.
So to kind of round out, since we've all talked about the SharePoint thing, I'll tell you how that went. And number one, he volunteered. He said, he brought it to me and said, I want to fix SharePoint. I was like, you understand what you're asking for? He's like, yes, but I've done it before. I'm like, okay, cool. Let's work together on this. That was number 2, right? We worked together. I didn't just like, okay, I figured it out, right? Let's plan this. I'll give you some organizational insights. But then I really like hit a diamond in the rough with this guy because he is a bulldog. You give him a task, he will not sleep. I have to make him log off at a decent time every night. And that just speaks to his hustle. It speaks to his commitment. And I'm so glad that that's there. But my job then becomes, all right, boundaries.
Yeah.
Okay. Don't burn yourself out. And
Burnout's real.
he's learning that little thing right now. He took some time off recently just because he was like, I'm done with SharePoint. I'm going to go stare at a goat for like 5 weeks. I don't know. He didn't do that. But it all kind of lined up to where he was, I don't know. I guess he was willing to do it, and he was very good at it, and he's the type of person to get it done, and he's persistent, and that's not everybody. That's definitely not me, right? Like I'm persistent, but not to that extent. It burned me out just even getting him spun up on the project. Mm-hmm. But definitely strengths and weaknesses, and his strength was apparently doing this project, and now it's an entire network refresh. So he never sleeps.
Wow, that's a lot for him to take on. But hey, I mean, I guess he's excited to be able to work on that stuff, and that's great. That's great. There's something for everybody, I guess. So we'll kind of change gears a little bit from the employee-facing side and more of the executive-facing side. So as you start to fix these things and communicate to the executives, like you were mentioning, Tim, communication is super important. How do you communicate turnaround plans and timing without over-promising to executives?
Under promise, over deliver, always. Not just with executives, with users. Tell that to your staff, your frontline staff. Get them out of the habit of working with their hair on fire, that everything's an emergency. Just because somebody put a ticket in or came to you with some problem doesn't mean drop everything and do it, because they didn't necessarily follow the normal processes and procedures in place. I see too often younger technicians and even across various departments in IT where every problem is a crisis, and it's not. A lot of us need to, often myself included, need to just slow down and realize that we can't do everything at once.
Mark that, take that to the bank. That was, I'm done, actually. I'm walking away now.
My big one's on timelines. When there's going to be an outage, when there's a plan this, when there's a plan that, always give yourself plenty of time. You do not want to, no IT individual wants to have a gun to their head. Okay, it's, you know, we've got a window of 6 a.m. to 7 a.m. on a Sunday. Like, no. Give a realistic window for folks to get stuff done. And if you get it done in an hour and you had 3 hours available, great. If not, you bought yourself some time. You can breathe a little bit. You give yourself some wiggle room. If it's going to take 8 hours on a Saturday, no, the weekend. Whole weekend's down. Oh, you don't have time for that? Okay, well, then we're going to live with this problem until you do. When do you have time for that? You have time for that in May? Great. Let's book it. Yeah. Give yourself time to do the job. Give yourself time to troubleshoot the job. Give your time to mess up the job and then get back to it, right? Make sure you have that available to you in that aspect. You said,
well, that's important, that last part, because don't assume because that particular task went well once that it's always going to do that. Don't estimate timelines to anyone based upon best case scenario.
Right.
That goes back to under promise, over deliver. Just because you were able to migrate a domain controller in 2 hours one time doesn't mean the next one's not going to take 6 because something failed.
Yep. Absolutely. There's always gotchas in IT and everything else, right? It's constantly happening. It's constantly changing. Somebody missed that one patch. That 2012 R2 server doesn't want to talk to the 2022 server. Why? I don't know. Figure it out, right? And so give yourself some time in that respect. You got to keep in mind, a lot of people that you're communicating to, they have no idea how to do your job. Zero. They don't know what you do. You speak some magic language that they don't understand. And honestly, most of my partners, they speak a language I don't understand. I don't understand taxes. I still owe the IRS money. That's not my job. It's not why I'm here. I'm not an accountant. I do IT, right? So make sure you give yourself that. They'll respect it. I need this time to do this thing. You want it done right? This is what time it's needed to be done. And they give it to you, and then get it done. Make sure you meet your goal.
That's the key there, right? Because if you're asking for all this time and all this downtime and you're doing a sloppy job of it, then you're not helping yourself, obviously, more ways than one. I think what really helped us through this little transition bit, I call it IT 2.0, because IT 1.0 was Tim, baby Tim as IT manager working with the MSP, and then, blinders half on. And then IT 2.0 was like, okay, Tim gets some help in here and the MSP's off our backs. IT 3.0 is what we're about to do. And there's a lot of preparation because we're about to triple in size, basically, as an organization. And so there's a lot of growth there. And our IT team is growing. People are moving. It's fun. Anyway, plan it. The point is, all this has to be planned. It should be planned. It shouldn't just be ad hoc. There's things that happen ad hoc, right? Okay, that's welcome to IT. But you plan what you can. And so what was really helpful for us was we actually had a strategic consultant come in that works with the organization pretty regularly. And she sat down with me and we worked together on an IT action plan. And that was really informative for me. I feel very comfortable doing that again by myself, but having her walk me through that and kind of prioritizing, it did the timelines, it did all the projects, all the things in a nice document an executive summary level document that we could hand to the executives and say, this is what IT has planned for the next year. Yeah. Do you have any questions? Yes? Okay, let's talk specifics. But instead of overwhelming anyone with like emails or anything, it was just, here you go, look at this at your leisure, an action plan. I'll see if I can find the template for it, and I'll throw it up in the lab as well. But that was, if you can pin it down in that framework, I think you're going to help yourself because it really formalizes a lot, and you can really communicate that at the executive level that is not technical at all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And if anybody in chat has any sort of like templates too for this kind of planning, definitely feel free to drop them in the lab. It's under blueprints. Would love to see what other people are doing too and be able to share with each other some of the resources that we all have. And then my next question was about maybe a mistake that you made in a turnaround effort, something that you tried that didn't really work, or something that you were pursuing that didn't really have as big of an impact as you wanted. What might it have been, and what did you learn from that too?
SharePoint.
Okay, man, this is a.
I joke, but when COVID started, we were kind of ahead of the curve on a Teams rollout and the remote access, because just for other business reasons, we were already on that path pretty hard. And we were doing a test rollout with Teams based upon using the SharePoint integration and project level for files and everything else to stay really hyper organized from a project centric attitude. Because most of the work we do is really long tail. It could take up to 5 years on a particular build out of a hotel or whatever the case may be, whatever the client is, and everybody works out of a folder in their inbox that is years old, and it may or may not be there without Outlook archiving settings, and depending on who's touched what, and I can't find this email. Did you look in your archive? Yada, yada, yada. Document revisions are a bear to track because there's multiple people with their hands in them. And I said, well, why aren't we using Teams per project? And why isn't there a point person taking ownership of the project, much like you would with a MySite implementation in SharePoint? And try to get traction on that, and try to try to get users within the business units to really take ownership of it and run those projects in that manner. I have not been successful doing it. We're going to probably do a revisit of that with some smaller projects and certain key players that are a little more technical. But there's a skills gap in the technology still, regardless of how much Microsoft thinks they're making it easy or any other vendor. I installed a printer for someone yesterday because we had a large format printer fail, and we need one just for emergency purposes to print 24-inch blueprints. And I loaded this driver from HP, and it looked like, I don't know, it looked like something that somebody drew in grade school. It was so simplified. It was just not a normal Windows driver I was used to. And I'm like, oh, this is where we're at. They want to simplify it so much that you have no control. And that's based upon, user input somewhere. And you've got to realize that, Ron said, I'm in IT, not accounting. I've got project managers that are in construction, not IT. And something that seems incredibly simple to me, like managing a Teams implementation and using that for file sharing and communication, when they've been placing files in a folder with the project name on a file server for 20 years, it is not an easy bridge to cross to get them to stay on the other side. So that's one that immediately comes to mind.
I've worked in those environments. I found a lot of success doing exactly what you're trying to describe with IT teams, but I will say Teams is not doing any favors in the notifications for any of those teams are off by default. And if you don't, as an individual user, go and manually turn those on, they don't see them. They're like, I didn't know you posted anything.
100%.
That is the worst implementation. Oh, I feel you. I feel you there with that one.
Yeah.
And also construction folks are the best, and they will not change until that folder doesn't exist. And that's, I feel you. It's extremely difficult to do that. Say something that I have been too cautious at times. I've gone like 6 to 8 months without updating Office in our environment because I was like, it's working, don't break it. And it's starting to break, or there's a security thing, or there's something that's just not working. And a lot of it had to do with I hadn't created a test environment, so I couldn't really kind of test it out. And so when I came back this second go around, I was like, I have to have a test environment to do that. And now we don't go more than 2 or 3 months without updating it. And I can troubleshoot all the problems ahead of time. And so I think I agree with Tim. I'm a planner. I like to plan a lot. Sometimes you can get caught in the planning, and you plan for 8 months, and then it's on to something else. You're like, well, did you even do it? Like, that was a waste. So I think that's probably been something where I've been too cautious at times, where I should have been a bit more just get it done, get it, figure out some of those things afterwards, but do it in a controlled manner that makes sense. I don't take everything to the bleeding edge. We're not on preview or any of that type of stuff, but I don't need to be running a version that's, from last September. That's not going to do us any good.
Well, as far as mistakes that I've made, of course I've made none. I'm perfect in every way. Just the best there's ever been. I'm kidding. That's sarcasm. Copilot. Sorry if anyone's got Copilot running. That's a backstage reference. No. I think one of the things that I did was I didn't get my bearings enough when it came to printers, and I got attracted by the shiny that was Universal Print with Microsoft, and proceeded to roll out. Everything worked great, awesome, communicated out to the organization, we're good, and then it broke horribly. And so then we're still in the process of kind of getting into a new print system, cloud print system, because we want that, because our workforce is entirely remote. We need that for when people show up at our campuses and need to print. So there's figuring out the best solution. Just because something's free and included in Microsoft does not mean that it's the best solution. From project management tools to cloud printing, just take the extra little bit of time, learn from me, and see if there's a better option than what you currently have. Don't just reflex to something because you may rebound back on yourself. So, and no one really was like, Tim's horrible, right? They were like, well, try again, kid. And boy, did I.
Since Tim brought up printing, and Damon, back to yours, neat trick. I've been in both of those situations with both of those things before. Use 7-zip to rip the actual driver out of the EXE and then just go install it manually. I've done that numerous times, especially with large format plotters, had no issues afterwards. So just find that EXE, right mouse click on 7-zip, extract, go find your actual, either your what's that? Geez, I'm getting my names wrong. Your PCL, whatever version you're looking for, they're usually in there. Sure. And God forbid if you're stuck with PostScript, so be it. It'll be in there too. Find that. Fire up your old school print server. Literally print server. Add your port. Done with that. Okay, go. Nope. All generic. Generic printer added. Add the drivers. Set your defaults. 9 times out of 10, you're done. That's. I feel you 100 times over. The vast majority, especially HP, has gone way downhill when it comes to that. So it's a little.
Yeah, it was awful. Yeah. And actually, I tried to load the regular driver after the package on my computer just because I didn't want to go up there and it not install because we were coming off of a, 25-year-old plotter that puked. And I couldn't even load it. It denied me. I had to wipe everything, go into print management, blow it away because after I loaded their magical package of click print or whatever it's called.
Yeah.
Like, what is this? They want you to drag a file into a window to print it. I'm like, I'm not doing that.
Yeah. 9 times out of 10 too, when you extract those particular ones, it's the HP universal driver, especially for the non-large plotters. For just the regular ones, it's like, really? This is the same PCL6 I've been using for 10 years. Anyway.
But, speaking to IT mess, because of the business line we're in, we went from the in-house plotter and outsourcing large format prints, 5 figures a year in expense to, at this point, I bought the printer for the sake of convenience because there's times where we want to print one and put it on the wall.
Yeah.
But I've implemented 65-inch TVs in meeting rooms, and everybody's getting used to looking at prints on their computers because they change so fast. Mm-hmm. We no longer have a room dedicated to storage of printed documents. So that's been a successful mess cleanup based upon technology improvements.
Yep. If it doesn't need to be in the field and it doesn't need a seal, it doesn't need to be printed.
Nope. And the desks don't need to be 4 foot deep anymore. I kid you not. The offices are smaller because the desks are smaller because people don't need to put 6 feet worth of blueprints on their desks. It's crazy to even think about that, but that was a reality 15 years ago.
Oh yeah. Yeah, my dad's an architect, and he still has.
There you go.
He still prints out everything now. He has his own business, still prints out everything because I think that it helps him, and so I think he's one of those people that would be like, if it's not in that one file, not in that one drive, I don't know.
It's not working for me.
Yeah. So it's hard to break that from some people for sure. Yeah. So we're coming up. We got 5 minutes left, and I wanted to ask one final question. What advice would you give to a leader that is walking into a dumpster fire right now? First thing that they should do.
Don't be afraid
of a drinking habit.
Damon, what did you say?
Go ahead.
Don't be afraid to make a mistake. There was somebody there before you that, if it's really a dumpster fire, they did some things without a lot of forethought. It's not going to be a smooth road to straighten it out. Have some courage and stand behind your reasoning when you're dealing with people above you. But make your decisions and stick with them and learn from them if they don't go the way you planned.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mine's don't change things too quick. You don't know why someone put that Band-Aid there that's holding back the dam of all the madness. Kind of look at everything. figure out that makes no sense. That right there makes no sense whatsoever. I don't know why that's that like that. But do a little bit of homework, do a little bit of research, try to figure everything out. Maybe get an idea as to why. You might find that service account that seems like it's got no name, doesn't seem like it's being accessed, and then one morning you're going to wake up and that SQL instance isn't running.
That one's critical.
Somebody used that critical service account that and in that scenario, by the way, just putting it out there, disable the account. Don't change the password. Don't delete it. Simply disable it. That way you can
rename it. Nothing.
Don't rename it. No matter how dumb it's named, don't rename it. Just disable it. Put it back. But that's one of those things. Don't just go. It's easy to look at it and go, "Oh, this is junk," and just want to burn it. No.
Somebody had a reason for it.
Whether it was a good reason or not, that's your job to figure out. Maybe that reason existed past. The reason doesn't exist anymore. But it doesn't necessarily mean there's not things that people haven't piggybacked off of it and so forth. So just, I agree. Don't be afraid to disable and so forth. You need to, but do a little homework first. Don't just blindly go running there guns blazing. I'm going to fix everything. I'm going to be amazing. You're going to get bit real quick.
Mm-hmm. Well, actual advice, just take a second, breathe, get your bearings first. I think we've talked about how to do that in a sane way. But seriously, understand what you're getting into. You're here for a reason. Going back to what I said in the imposter syndrome webinar earlier. You're here for a reason. Execute. Execute excellently, but make sure that you're doing the right thing, not just the cool, shiny thing. Take that from the totally perfect guy that did that. So, no, I'd say just breathe. Just, you got this. Take your time. Communicate.
And what was your unserious advice?
Unserious advice was don't develop a drinking habit.
Okay.
Oh.
Yeah. Also a good one to remember.
Just in general.
Yeah. Well, awesome. Thank you guys so much for joining today. This was a really, really great conversation. As always, I'm going to post the recap in the lab with some of the points from this webinar as well as some of the points from the chat. So if you weren't able to join until later, you can always find that in the lab and you can kind of rewatch it and things like that. And then we'll be back in a couple of weeks. We'll be talking about the IT leader tightrope. So how to balance individual contributor responsibilities with managing a team, because doing both can be very, very difficult. So thank you so much again for hopping on to everyone in the chat, on the panel. Really appreciate it. And I will see y'all in the